2, 3, 4.
Bombs explode in your face. Another win for the human race. Shattered homes and empty stairs. No one sees and no one cares. The hungry beg while the rich ignore. Another day, whoa, another war. The circus clowns are here in town, but there's nothing to be worried about. Oh, there's nothing to be worried about. Nothing to be worried about. No, nothing, nothing at all. No, nothing, nothing at all. Leaders lie. People cheer, children cry, and no one hears. The circus clowns are here in town, but there's nothing to be worried about. No, there's nothing to be worried about. No, nothing to be worried about. No, nothing, nothing at all. No, there's nothing, nothing at all. It's all a jester's game. Peace is yours to claim. Ignore the dark parade. It's just a fool's charade. No, there's nothing to be worried about. Nothing to be worried about. No, nothing, nothing at all. No, there's nothing, nothing at all.
Hey friends, we're back. It's Friday evening here, 7 o'clock, and the sun is still a long way from setting or going away. Definitely goes away. Nice to see Conspiracy Music Guru in the house whilst playing his newest track, which I have to say I really, really like.
Yeah, we really, there's just something,
Heartfelt.
you can feel his heart energy in that. Yeah.
And feels warmer and progressive in terms of the message and in terms of where we're going
Yeah.
and where, you know, as an antidote to all of the noise and
being part of the
distraction.
solution rather than the problem. And actually, I think people need that right now. Actually,
Definitely. And, you know, obviously we know that there's been a cat thrown amongst the pigeons, a fox amongst the chickens, or a badger. Badgers are terrible when it comes to chickens.
or poo on the moon.
Oh, you didn't want to bring that up so early on, did you? Have you guys seen that?
Got to start with a bit of
No,
fun.
just, yeah. Well, let me just, before we do that, say hello to JP and Alex Michael and DJ New Moon. And Alex Michael is having this, I'm going to say, probably like the highlight of the community's events for 2025, as far as I'm aware anyway. I know the Americans aren't maybe going to be doing a big thing, and this isn't necessarily this is nothing like a conference or any of that kind of stuff, but as an opportunity to get together with people, have a bit of a shindig.
I think a tonic. It's like a tonic for everybody. You know, life can be quite hard, and sometimes it's good to stop and reflect and to celebrate each other and to connect with each other and just take a moment to have some fun. And hopefully that's what this is. You know, it's an opportunity to meet some people and connect and have a laugh and do some singing and just
Definitely. So that's really exciting that Dawn Lester is going to come in. If you don't know her, I don't particularly know her. I just have read some of her Substack or whatever, you know. I think it's Substack where she's on, and I know she's very well.
She's in the sort of the health freedom area of that. Clearly she's more, but I think she's just another one of those souls that is.
Yeah, so that's
finding
cool.
and helping, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're all divine souls, and we're all equal in this creation. But it is nice to be able to spend time with people who are excellent in their field, you know. And Alex is certainly demonstrating that over and over again. And this latest offering is, it's really.
Well,
really lovely.
I believe that every single one of us has come here with some medicine. In other words, not pharmaceutical medicine, but with your essence that you have come to be of service to the world in. And that can be as simple as, you know, drawing for pleasure, or it could just be as simple as, you know, healing your soul. That could be your purpose. But of course we get to a certain stage in our lives where we can then hopefully move into that position of elder or sage, and that we can then share that. I mean, I think that's the whole point of a healer. A healer is not someone who heals, it's someone that has healed and then will hold space for someone else to be able to do the same.
Yeah, it'd be nice to talk to you about where you're at, and maybe sometime in the next month we could schedule a chat with you.
Yeah.
And you can tell us where you're at with that, and
or we can do a promo, because it'll be good to talk about it and to
because I think that your music, millions of views for Flat Earth Man and all of that wonderful stuff, and the solfeggio, and it speaks, that stuff. Flat Earth Man speaks to us, from 2015, 16, 17, and it'll continue to speak to people as they, come to the truth. And then really what I see in this latest piece is like an opportunity to lead others to their own salvation, the journey within, and not focusing on all of that. What was there was a word in the song there, you know, the theater out there. So that's, I think, is really good. In fact, I'm in a chat thread group with the people that I met up with in Wales, and they posted that song. One of the guys, Ben, he posted that song this morning, you know, so it's to be shared amongst people who are, because a lot of some people that are in the kind of truth-seeking community are so, like we all are or have been, so caught up in the angst and the rage, pushback, and you know, you're just pissed off. You just found out that daddy was, you know, with another woman, or mommy was with another one. Well, anyway, so you know, yeah, you know, you just, but you know what I mean. It's like you know, you're outraged, and sorry about the light, and so you know, one needs to go through that process of grief and anger, to move through the cycles, the emotions, up into the higher kind of states of being. Now, that just because we achieve that on a day, you know, that we can kind of move that energy out and up, and get ourselves into a much higher state of acceptance and being with everything, there will come those signals and those energies again that will need that process of releasing, is how I see it. So this is, just well done, Alex. Great.
Yeah, I mean, while you're talking about it, also makes me think about, you know, that we are in a very crazy time. This year, astrologically, is been spoken about for a very long time, because every luminary or every energy or every archetypal energy moves into another sign this year. So it is big. And
you want to see that? Or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's just, and of course we can also see how crazy the world is. And for me, part of that is it's got to get that crazy for us to actually see it, and detach from it, and start to take our power back and all those kind of things. So
this is an example of the crazy that's going on in the world right now. And you do have to wonder whether this doesn't help wake a few people up, because, well, once again, we've got the same old cartoon image of a globe much closer to the moon than is in the official shot from 1972, the only one they took, I think, of the Earth from the moon. And they're calling it one giant heap for mankind. Sorry, I just need to turn that on. I'm a little bit behind the times here. Hey, Squirrel, nice to see you. DJ, David, nice to see you. So really, one giant heap for mankind. The moon is so full of the astronauts' waste that NASA is offering a shitload of cash to whoever can clear it up. There you go, Squirrel. There's an opportunity there for you, mate. Maybe we could go in together on that one. I might know someone who knows someone who knows Elon, and he could probably get us up there in one of his cars for about $50. So, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, maybe. I wonder if the full story is here. I don't think so. That's just the headline.
Normally you have to pay more.
That's just. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine? We were talking about this today with Zizi and Luke, and saying, can you imagine? They've got a picture here of like a pile. Oops. They've got a picture here of a pile. Sorry about the financial turn. Of pile apparently of poo. So a picture. This beggars belief, right? So imagine, even if it were real, that 12 men walked on the moon for, like a day each, maybe 2 days, you could say. How many times do you think they would needed to have go for a turd in that short amount of time? And therefore, there could only be in the order of 24 or 30 like movements, Donald Trumps, I call them. There could be about 30 Donald Trumps on the moon in total. Now, how, after 50 years, is this meant to be like, a problem for the moon? After 50 years, surely there would have been decay. And perhaps what they're worried about is that there's so much shite going around that it would actually start to self-combust, and there might be a fire on the moon, and the moon might become hot, unlike the cold state that we find it in today. We notice, of course, that underneath this cardboard rocket thruster here is absolutely no disturbance of the powdery surface. And you know what? The believers have got excuses for this. They really do. And that all this tin foil here, which is just folded foil paper, is actually the sort of technology they can't make today, and therefore they can't go back to the moon. Anyway, that's the sort of stuff that's going on the moon. I mean, in this crazy world of ours. It was one of the prop guys. Hey, Kathy, brother. Bass Ackwards, good to see you, man. Yeah, surely they had a toilet in the studio. Well, we were imagining that. Can you imagine that they're halfway out, or they're away from the lunar lander, the LEM or whatever they call it, and they they're about, because they couldn't walk quickly to the lunar lander, and I assume there had to have been a toilet on board of that, or, and this is where it gets really clever, and NASA in the 1950s and 60s had this stuff zipped. Basically, they would have to open like one internal zip, release the chocolate starfish, squeeze something out, then close the zip, create like a sealed, or what do you call that lock? An airlock system for this Donald Trump. And then once the airlock was established, they would finally be able to unzip the exterior one to allow said movement to leave the suit. Now that's going to be a messy thing, And we were joking about how, but they've got they must have one of those, like, on the camper van, they've got those tiny toilets. So they must have that. Of course, there's no room in this tiny thing for 3 men to move around in their suits, and of course the toileting thing, there'll probably be an excuse for that. But obviously, it sounds to me like they were having to shit into a bag, and then drop that bag on the stage sound set, But imagine that they have got like a toilet on board, and they're in the 0G. It would be floating around. It wouldn't head down in the way that it does on this plane of reality. Anyway, we have strayed quite away from.
Well, it was something very funny that Dave received this morning, and again, It's good to laugh at these things. And yes, it does show how incredibly crazy things are, and I just think it's going to get crazier, and it's totally the opportunity for us to see it. So
you guys have seen that Trump had his all his tariffs. He's paused them. For me, nothing is done without it being a signed off part of the design. Create pandemonium, create a status quo, create a hierarchy, exert a certain kind of muscle, create the causes or the conditionality such that the mainstream pundits will have a ready explanation as to why the world has sunk or strode further into difficult times. So, I think that's what this is doing, and it's like, it's the old, oh, well, he was just trying something and it didn't work, and, well, we've rode it back, but the Chinese thing is a bit of an issue, and we're going to go on having, more tension with them, and blah, blah, blah. I do wonder, if I was to kind of just speculate a little bit, I do wonder whether we're still a few years away from this all kind of crunching, and then possibly the conditions for people to say, well, Trump or Trump's successor needs to continue, and we're in a state of conflict, and we have to suspend normal kind of. That's how it feels at the moment.
Can I be honest?
But I could be.
I think it's all fluff.
Well,
I think
yes,
it's all
fluff,
fluff,
yes.
and actually it plays into the astrology. They're using the astrology with all the fighting, and when you see the energies that have been around, and people are distracted by it, when really what we should be doing is going, hey, there's something for me to see inward, rather than what is Trump's next move. That actually brings me to what I'd like to chat a little bit about tonight.
Andrea's got a hot potato.
Well, it's something that is relevant, I think, energetically, particularly because tomorrow is a full moon in Libra.
And those parasites love the full moon.
Yeah, it's parasites definitely come alive at full moon time. But the Libra rules relationships, and so it's that's sort of will be the energy right now. And of course, we've got so many other sort of other energies going on that are assisting in this invitation for us to, the best way to just explain things currently for me, the way I perceive them, is that there's this new energy where we have gone through this opportunity to return to who we truly are, with Neptune being in Pisces, and that being we are these spiritual, eternal beings, but we're having human experience, and that sort of alchemy continues with Neptune now moving into Aries, where it's now I can embody that and take action with that. But for us to do that, we have to navigate and heal and dissolve and transform and mature, and purge and let go and all those things, and feel and heal all the things that are getting in the way of that. And it's multi-layered, it's entangled, it's deep, it's old, and that's all that programming that we have that is still getting in the way of who we truly are. And so the full moon in Libra.
Before you pursue that, I just want to or underline what you were just saying, what Andrew was just saying about who we truly are. It's, for me, an ongoing remembering, coming back together. And in our generations, we were ripped so far from our this truth that we cannot simply discover the next Tartaria or the next flat earth deception, or a nuance within the panoply of deceptions. We cannot discover any of that and remember or repair and return to living in that, living in or embodying that divinity. I think that's an ongoing process, but one that needs much more than simply the gateway truth of the earth is not a spinning globe.
Well, it's a bit like I said to you this morning, is that talking therapy is great, but if it's only awareness that you have, and if there's no integration, if there's no embodiment between the heavens and the earth, then you've just got a lot of information that you have nothing to do with.
Embodiment, and also maybe harmonization or harmonizing. For me, it's about, it always seems to come back to the balance of light, dark, high, low, heaven, hell, the balance, the center of the Christian cross right here in the heart, and love. And, you know, and so that has to be, that's the thing that we're here to do, is to harmonize and to come back to the heart and come back to love and set aside, and I love that song so much, but to set aside, all of this charadery.
And but I think that being present with whatever is there and being in flow of it is what is that harmony. When I am being and allowing spirit to move through me, no matter what that experience is, then that for me is that harmony, because I'm not in resistance, I'm not gripping, I'm not controlling, I'm not I'm in the process of allowing, in the process of acceptance, in the process of presence. I mean, that's been very, very present for me this week, in that I've had lots of emotion moving through me and lots of revelations, particularly in relationship. The triggers that have come up for me have been able to show me what's still there, what's still present. And of course, I have all my natural mechanisms that I learned very young to try and overcome that, or to defend or to resist that. And they aren't who I truly am.
I hadn't noticed, darling.
Well, relationships are our most amazing mirrors.
I've been gifted with a fantastic opportunity to do some gardening this last little while, week or so, and I have to say, because it's been a while that I did any really hard labor, it is so grounding. Squirrel, you must have that in spade loads, pun intended. I've been thinking about how awesome it would be to be involved in like landscaping projects, because it's a real, it's just it's a win-win-win, because you're doing physical work, which is so important for the male body and the female body, of course. So important. It's so, and I don't specify what that work is, but sitting at a desk is not work for the physical body. And then in this week, there has been vitamin D on offer, because they've been doing spraying, but not in the way that has had a completely like blanketing. So we've actually had sunshine, and I've had sun on my back, vitamin D, loaded up. And then the third bonus is, of course, you're getting a little reimbursement for it as well. So,
but you have also had this week
that
through
helps.
Interactions in relationships, and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be romantic, but your own relationships. You have had opportunity to see stuff that is still there for you too.
Yeah.
So both Dave and I have had the opportunity to see that there are, I don't want to use the word still, because I think it's an ever deepening process, and it's an ever dissolving process. So it's one that continues, but the energy, because we still had Mercury retrograde, which went direct on Sunday, I think, and we've had Venus. In fact, Venus is still, I think it goes direct this weekend, in retrograde, and it's been hanging out with Saturn, which is always a little bit more tricky. And it has allowed emotions and
Well, interestingly, I can share that for me, what came up, what Andrea was referring to there, was like an interaction with my sister and my father, and it was, it had hallmarks of childhood interaction, and so I was gifted this opportunity to kind of experience that again, and then take the emotion that came with that, and process it in in a more
responsible way.
Responsible, or more, responsible is fine. And so I think that it doesn't have to be specifically like my situation, but perhaps there are situations where we are being given, life is passing us tests, or
I think life is our teacher.
and it's,
Really, we saw that guy say the other day. He said he believes that, and this kind of I resonate with in terms of astrology, is that you're born with a whole set of lessons. They're already part of who you have come here to, or what you've come here to experience, and then life will curate those experiences for you, so that you get to learn them. And I think that that's what astrology does. It takes you on a journey, and it offers you, and we have free will, so it offers you the opportunity. But we of course have the opportunity to lean into that, or remain in resistance of it. Obviously, I know that there is muddying that goes on in the world in terms of that, and there's manipulation, and so it's not for the faint-hearted, and it does take a whole lot of courage and a whole lot of responsibility. So on that note, or let me just, before I carry on, can you bring up the? I just thought I'd show you quickly. I won't belabor it because it's not for everyone.
There you go. You can use a mouse.
But so this is my chart again. So there's Libra. Libra is the archetype of the scales of justice, but it's also ruled by Venus. It happens to be my 11th house, which is the house of community. But there's the moon there. It's not quite at full. I think it'll be more close. It's the 23 degrees, so which will be more here, which is going to kind of cross over my Pallas Athena and my Uranus. But on this side, we have the Sun, which is in Aries, and Chiron. And I think this is what I wanted to add into this, was that that when the moon is full, we're also going to have Chiron and the Sun conjunct, which means the energies will be on top of each other, which then magnifies them. And the Sun will represents the masculine, or the father, and Chiron the healer, and it's that shamanic healing. So it's the deep wound, it's those deep opportunity for deep healing. So the opportunity will be, and it certainly is for Dave and I, the opportunity to see your relationship with the masculine within, because we all have a masculine within, and then the masculine without. So whether that be with a male figure in your life, or perhaps even the patriarchy, but a male partner, a male friend, a brother, but anybody with, and like I said, the feminine has that masculine as well. So there is an opportunity for that deep healing, and it might show itself, or you might experience something that is offering you or guiding you to that healing. So with that being said, and this is very Libra, the archetype of Libra is the people pleaser. Libra wants harmony and balance, but it hates conflict. So as a consequence, the Libra energy can be a people pleaser. It can want everything to just be good, everything to just be okay. And so it tends to want to please. And with that energy, there is often the presence of codependency. And Dave and I were just discussing earlier, what does that mean? And codependency for me means when I've handed my power to someone else to give me something. So in the case of a child, this is why often codependency happens, is that you feel unsafe, and so you are seeking safety, in this case by pleasing the outside, so pleasing mommy, pleasing daddy, pleasing the teacher, pleasing the government, pleasing the doctor. Obviously this is when you're much older, but that you hand the power over to the outside for them to say that you are safe, for them to give you love, for them to give you worthiness. And that's, for me, is what codependency is when I am needing something from somewhere that's not me to give me something.
So you mean like if I had to take a needle in my arm to give me safety from invisible cough,
Yes.
for example?
Yes. Well, it's not wanting. So you don't want to be disappointing. You want to be the pleaser, and you know that the only way you're going to be safe, whether that be physically, emotionally, spiritually safe, you're going to, and we see this in religion, right? That we pray to God to keep us we don't take that power back and realize that actually my sense of safety within is actually my sense of containment within is actually my connection to spirit, and it's not someone out there up in the sky. But we see this the whole Trump thing. When you were talking about that, for me the theater that's going on is more about, look, I am the superhero, or I am the man who's going to save you, because it keeps us in that dependency, that codependency. But I need you to sort out the world because that's the only way I can be safe. I need you to sort out the world because that's the only way I can have money, or I can have security, or whatever the case may be. And so it's that codependency. Now, it's not about being totally independent. We're interdependent beings. We want connection, but it is about having taking our power back. But to do that, we have to be prepared to be with everything that's running there. And this takes me to my next thing, the energy of resentment. And it's a new one that I've been sitting with because I've realized that I carry it. And I was interested in what that looks like if I had to understand it. So I wondered if you could just put the
I was just posting this link to Facebook.
The browser on for me.
Sure. Check that out. Now, do you want to go and...
I want to go to...
Palace Athena?
No, the Instagram one. It should be open. Okay. So I've been following this lady for a very long time. When I did my coaching, a lot of it was around the elements, and in particular around the Chinese elements. And this lady, Stephanie Nosko on Instagram, her thing is Qigong, and she offers teachings on the energetics, particularly around Chinese medicine. And so I'd remembered that she had done something that she does on a lot of things, and it's fascinating because obviously from a Chinese medicine perspective, but also German new medicine and bioresonance and all these other things, we know that emotions are an energy, and certain areas of our body will hold those energies, and when there's no flow, then there's stagnancy, and that causes a whole cascade of...
I like to give people this example of that. If you take a pool of water and that it has a river flowing through it all the time, that pool's going to be healthy. But if you slow that water down a bit, then there might be little pockets and regions that are not getting much water flow, and they will start to get a little bit unhealthy. And then, of course, if you block that flow altogether and don't let there be any churn, that water will go stagnate and get unwell.
So this is an interesting emotion because it's not just one energy. And anyway, I'll read you what she's written because she's written it so beautifully, and so I'm going to honor her for this teaching and how beautifully she's done it. So resentment is a complex emotion that impacts multiple organs. However, the main organs it impacts are the liver and the lungs. While the main component of resentment is anger, which is an upward moving energy directed by the liver, it also contains flavors of disappointment and grief, which are governed by the lungs. The defining characteristics of resentment as opposed to anger is that it is a low-grade, long-lasting emotion that is held over days, weeks, years, or even decades. Hence the saying, harboring resentment. Resentment is an emotional charge kept inside the body, docked as a permanent fixture of our psyche. impacting our beliefs, relationships, and how we interact in the world. Clinging onto the past is a function of the lungs and a sign that past grief that hides behind your anger may not be fully processed. You might hope that if you stay resentful, the person or persons will experience the same hurt as they inflicted and will finally understand your pain. This is a normal response of the liver since it is the organ that seeks to correct injustices. Libra. Resentment is a sign that you really cared about something and wish to make it right. Unfortunately, the energy behind the resentment you hold will never reach your enemy, but rather it's kept inside like a boa constrictor around your energy body. From the Chinese medicine perspective, it's essential that the qi moves freely, like the way a breeze blows from an open door through a window.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
You know, like some people say, oh, I've got such a tightness in my chest, my throat, my trouser area. It'll be that?
Possibly. I mean, that tightness can be the grip, because what we do is, because we don't want to feel that emotion, because it was so painful, we tend to grip. I mean, I do there's a meditation that I do that I offer where you slow down and you notice, and when you actually do, you realize how much gripping. The other day when I'd experienced some of the emotion, I noticed that the pain that I had right here was actually right here, just for my jaw, where obviously I'm holding my jaw so that I can keep that emotion in. So yeah, that would be the tightness.
Yeah, and it ends up leading to, like, you know, teeth trouble or other kinds of ailments that the quacks will, like, you know, cut out or poison or whatever, rather than understanding that it's energy flow.
Well, because they're not looking at it holistically, are they? They're not looking at your body as an energy body. They're looking at it as a body of matter.
Andrea's dad, he passed 7 years ago now, and I was there when he passed, and he almost within a minute or few minutes, he looked like a young man. Maybe 10 minutes.
Well, your mother was the same, right?
Yeah, it was
like
unbelievable.
All that tension.
It was like, wow, look at that, you know.
All the wrinkles go away.
Yeah, it was it was like a transformation that maybe over the next hour or something or two, it was unbelievable. And that's, you know, it shows you how much we carry unknowingly, and all of those energies, as you say, are boa constrictors, and they're limiting flow.
So resentment is like closing the windows and the doors of your heart. In this process of shutting down energetically, even if only to one person, you lock off parts of yourself and the chi's ability to flow. Because the grief and anger of the past was never processed, and that energy causes the chi to stagnate, leading to chronic diseases, pain, and other symptoms. In some ways, resentment hurts you. In some ways, resentment is more harmful for your energy than anger, because it's a toxic energy held in the body over time. She's used Nelson Mandela as he said, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. The antidote to resentment is forgiveness, and this process takes time. So you can go back to the screen. So the reason I'm presencing this, and in particular with codependency, and particular with in respect to, you know, we can say we feel resentful to the world or to the authority out there, but often this resentment starts really, 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 really young, and that first authority figure is mummy and daddy. And then we transfer that over onto other authority figures, whether it be teacher, priest.
Actually, often when you see children who are really getting into a lot of trouble at school, oftentimes the clues to why that is for that child will be in the home. I know, obviously, with our own energetic signatures, you know, some people are going to struggle with confinement more than others. But I do think that.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, there's obviously a spectrum of these things, but sometimes they're so subtle, and, you know, you make decisions about yourself. I think Gabor Mate says, with trauma, it's not so much that what happens to you, it's that you had to experience it alone. and so therefore you are never able to fully process that anger or that hurt or that pain or that heartbreak. But just another thing about the heart, if the heart is, if it is shut because of resentment, that's home. For me, the heart is where we connect to spirit. It's where we actually hear from. It's where in Chinese medicine they believe it's the Shen. It's the connection. It's the connection to spirit. But it's where, for me, where when we are heart open, then we are in flow. Then we are truly the magnets that we are meant to be. But whilst our hearts are shut, then none of that chi, or even just simply vitality and life force can move, because there is a process of it needing to move around our body. And if there's blockages anywhere, whether it be just your liver or your kidneys or wherever that blockage is, but in particular the heart, because I think essentially we all have some sort of heartbreak when we're very, very little, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. And often the resentment comes in where the person that hurt us, and that could be another authority figure, of course, people have been hurt in awful ways, but at the end of the day, the not processing those emotions mean that we stay stuck. Like she said, it actually ends up hurting us. So yeah, that's my little...
Cool. Well, we are definitely masters of our own ship in that way, and we can go about this life with a stink about stuff that happened to us in the past, and actually even not really even be aware that we are carrying that stink. Oftentimes it's blind, and you're unaware that it could be different, but you form today's perspective from yesterday's experience. And so, we need to be able to, or be willing to look to that experience as a blueprint, perhaps, to why we have the relationship we have with everything out there, whether it be a partner or business or government.
Well, and what the mind does and the ego does is, because it's really it's a mechanism that keeps you safe. It will look, it's like on hypervigilant. It's constantly looking for that same familiar experience, and it just, sometimes even a word or a smell or a flyaway comment, or going back to a place, or having birth, for instance, that whatever you experience in birth, when you give birth to your child, your body will remember that experience of your birth.
Not many women here,
but that's the same. That'd be the same for a guy. He might experience having a child based on what happened to him when he was born.
Yes.
And so we carry these things so unconsciously, because even Zizi now, if you ask him, can he remember anything sort of pre-5, his memories are quite sketchy. They're quite just like little glimpses here and there. He can't remember a lot, and that's because we're not consciously, cognitively taking in things. We're just sponges taking in every experience we have, and those that remain incomplete. And then we're operating from the ego rather than from who we truly are.
Yeah. Well, we have to find our own. Sorry about that. We have to find our own way to that. But I really think that, and I have, while you're talking, and I've thought about this before. I'm thinking, no one comes into this physical realm without there being lessons to be learned. People have different courses and paths and so on. But I do wonder about those non-conformist types, of whom the truth community is replete. And I do wonder about whether that, they have a certain or a particular, we have a particular father wound or a like some kind of thing that triggered a screw you, I'm not going to believe, or maybe it's not even a trauma-based thing, more like I felt like when I was 6 or 8 years old, that I felt like I was a little different from my peers, and that I kind of saw the world differently. I was thinking, because I had this interaction with my dad in the last week or so, I was wondering about a question I'd posed to him when I was 6 or 7 about, what is the meaning of all of this? What's the purpose of this game? Because I was starting to, probably at that age, always been sort of, a little bit aware of things in a way, but, and noticing that the world seemed a little bit messed up. And so, and his answer to me was unsatisfactory to the 6 or 7 year old that I was. And, it didn't feel like a complete answer. That's because my father, he had accepted the status quo more readily. And
well, we also know that your father's unsafety as a young boy due to being in
World War
wartime
II.
and losing his mother and being shipped off somewhere else, that all played into all of that stuff. But if you just take me back to the screen and to the astrology chart, I'll show you, just to give an example of what you've just said. So if you go to Brave,
1 second,
and back to the chart. And this, if we had to,
not Donald Trump.
if we had to show, a look at everybody's chart that's sort of maybe on this call or whatever, there probably would either be some similarities but I'm going to take you to Dave's if he doesn't mind. And
I'm still hoping Hippie will hit you up for
exactly. So
a reading.
this over here is Virgo in the 12th house, which is our connection to other realms. It's other things, but let's just go. It's our psyche, and you have Uranus there. Uranus tends to be where we are doing things differently, but you also have Pluto, which is like wants to go and look underneath. So I think there's that aspect. You also have Mercury and Venus in Aquarius, and Aquarius is all about uniqueness and freedom and all those kind of things. And so Mercury being your thoughts and your communication. And then one other thing is you have Sagittarius in your 3rd house, which is also thoughts and learning, particularly when you're younger. It's your early learning. So I think there are definitely aspects to our charts that mean we're more divergent. But also I think we have contracts of why we came here. We came here to be part of this in whatever way resonates or we're drawn to.
And it's exciting. I mean, I think, and Alex's song, I don't even know if he wrote it actually, or whether his friend Franz wrote it. So I do need to clarify that. I think there is so much to be optimistic for, in the journey, the quest for self. Then to move through the minefield of needing to know exactly how the lights work in the sky. I saw someone say something about TFE was doing a live something this evening. I wasn't even aware of that. And whether or not it was faked or not, almost is like beyond important at the moment. It's not material to are there people deceiving, are there people looking to fool more people and so on. Absolutely. Are we going to be finding our highest self by getting enraged by the deceivers and why it matters to people like us is because we want the truth to be revealed, and so having people throw Donald Trump's moon movements into the water is really quite unhelpful, to that end. And so we are like, oh, well, that's bloody pissed me off, because, they're hiding the truth from people, which is, of course, what has been going on forever and is happening even in the newspapers, where they can convince people that they've got to go and clean up a couple of dozen 50-year-old fossil turds from Neil Armstrong. In fact, if you could convince ballers that you've gone there and you've got some fossilized dump, you could tell them that it's the same thing like what's his name does, Buzz Aldrin. He takes coins out of his pocket every now and again and says, yeah, these were on the moon, I'll flog them to you for five grand.
But don't you think that what it reflects back to me is that my discernment, or knowing myself, and also being connected to something much greater than me, that I can hear the truth, like this unknowing truth. It's like that I am exactly where I'm meant to be, that I'm on the path that I'm meant to be on. That for me is what that should be giving me. It's like, if anything, if this is too muddy, which it could be, even if it's not intentional, can you find your steady line? Can you find that balance? Can you be in your own power and go, well, I can one, not know. I was listening to Globebusters just a short bit last week, and Karen B was saying, can we be okay with not knowing? Can we be okay with not knowing? We know what it isn't, and we know that it doesn't work on a globe, but we don't know what it is. Yeah. And can we be okay with that? And I think that does take some of that inner calm.
Yes.
That you're just okay with being where it is right now.
Yes. That's it. To have that kind of inner strength, peace, and like centeredness, because if all the crazy stuff means that prices continue to skyrocket, and the limitations and other things continue to come our way, which seems to be the way at the moment. How flexible are you? How resilient and how robust are you, in that? And of course, everybody else who doesn't know that this is being done on purpose, they're having to go through it too. Just they're going through it with the narration of the BBC.
Well, they're in survival mode and doing all the mechanisms that they need to do and being told to do to try and keep themselves safe. And I saw a little post, which I actually sent to my sister, that said, when we worry, we're future timelining. And actually, that in this moment, we're safe.
Yeah.
In this moment, we're good. I mean, I find myself having to sort of like, oh my gosh, there's the moon. Can you see it? There's a tree.
Oh, yeah.
That, I find myself sort of in my mind and like, okay, what do I need to do next? And how am I going to, and really to stop and go, wow, what do I have? I've had a few moments this week where I've had to actually look around and go, wow, I'm just so grateful for what I have right now. I don't need to be anywhere else. I don't need it to be any different.
Yeah.
What I have right now. And there have been moments this week where I've had to hold myself and say, you're safe. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to be with all these big feelings that are wanting to move through you. So it's not just about it being all peaceful and blissful and there being nothing to have to confront, because life gives us that. That's what this journey is.
Like I've said before, you can't go and... I don't think you can sit in a dark cave for all the years of your life and then come out and go, well, I'm the done deal. Well, you haven't actually been in the world, and really you've got to be in the world, be resilient in the world, not hiding in a monastery.
Well, and flow of the world and experience the world and everything that it gives you. And I think that most of the time we're all just trying to survive it. I mean, how often you ask people, so how are you doing? And they'll go, oh, I'm surviving. well, no, that's not, even when we're going through a tough time, it's actually, we're not meant to just survive it. We're yes, it's a storm and it feels really uncomfortable and hard, and it's giving us lessons. But I mean, what's a lesson if it's easy, right? Then there's no point to it anyway.
Well, I mean, I have said this a number of times. Those who've been listening to my channel for a while will know that I spent 3 months in the Angolan War in 1987, which was at the tail end of my 2-year national service. And in that time, I got rank, and I was a troop sergeant responsible for 4 vehicles crewed by 3, a gunner, a driver, and a crew commander. And I was in one of those 4 vehicles in my troop. And I had certain responsibilities as the troop sergeant, other than for staying alive and keeping my crew and my teammates alive. And that was, for a 19-year-old, like a really tough life experience, really tough. And we lost people on the front line, and so it was like quite an it was quite an ordeal. You can read about it in my book, actually, Battle on the Lomba, 1987, David Mannell. Available at only 1 or 2 good bookstores and online.
Write in the comment section today, do another book.
Write another book.
Write another book.
My father said that to me this week. I'd written some stuff to him, and he's like, "Damn, your command of the English language is impressive." Anyway, that story I was telling you was simply to kind of give you a bit of context before I said the next thing, which is that these 6 years have been much tougher than that. I mean, obviously having bombs and things and hitting your vehicle and all of that, planes flying overhead and trying to bomb you and stuff, all of that happening is in the moment is extremely challenging. But you're so deep in it, you can only kind of go through it. And at the end of the day, probably there'll be more ration packs available, or you'll be able to do, you're inside of a structure, you're kind of supported. And we were so far into Angola, we couldn't get fresh food, but but I felt supported in that context. Whereas in this context, it has very much been us having to survive each day.
Can I ask you what you think the test is that we and probably all of you have been put through in these last few years?
Well, I think that it's like learning about, because although obviously at 19 I did what I did, I also then eventually ended up in like a desk jockey in an office environment. So I lost a lot of my resilience, that sense of self and that ability that you feel like you have, and whatever, after 10, 15 and 20 years of being somebody else's bitch, strapped to a keyboard, you lose some of that, or a lot of that. And so I've had to, and I continue to have to find that inner strength through the sometimes feeling like so fearful and uncertain. And if you remember our kind of difficulty when we first landed in South Africa, and all sorts of other adventures along the way, where it's been like touch and go, and quick nod to the supporters here.
But actually, and this is what I think, in summary, what it's been trying to teach us, and that's very Neptune and Pisces, is actually to trust life.
Oh my gosh.
To trust life. And how many times, more times than we can even probably talk about.
Even if we wrote a book about it, we wouldn't remember
all the times that when we have been at that edge, that the next step has revealed itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what life has been trying to teach us. And for me, going back to who you truly are is that. It's my new relationship with life. It's my new relationship that I'm held by something way bigger, and that it wants my growth. It wants me to be in the being of love. It wants my expansion. and it's guiding me and inviting me and showing me and teaching me every single day. And it's what is changing for me. And I'm not saying I'm there yet. You know, I only just a little while ago had that same sort of feeling of terror in my body of, you know, old stories that then try and future timeline me. But that I am having this experience that is for me. It's for me, not to me. And so I believe that our journey has taken away, it ripped away all those things we thought we needed to guarantee that we were safe and that we would survive, and has nudged us into surrender, nudged us into finding our peace, finding ourselves, finding our true essence, detaching from those things that are illusions, taking our power back, that self-mastery, because I believe self is God. I think if we don't realize how powerful we are because, and that we already are it. But it's returning to that, and I think that's what our journey has done, and it continues.
It continues.
Right? It continues.
But it does afford us like the the notches on the bedpost, as it were, because when it comes to supporting others to take their journey, then if you've walked it yourself, you're so much better equipped to support somebody else take those same steps. And here we are in what we may look back in 10 years' time and see how early days all of these steps were, and it could be even longer than that, where we're still kind of working towards attaining a higher vibration in the self.
I think it's a lifetime journey, and
it is a lifetime journey, but in terms of that's for the self. But now we know what we know. How are we to teach others?
To be of service to others.
To be of service to others. And I think that's surely part of the kind of calling, is that you give from the overflow, but you're meant to be so abundant in your own self that you do have do create that overflow from which to support your family and your community. With moving forward.
Totally. And actually, Dave and I have got to the point now, don't get me wrong, sometimes we are having to deal with some of the emotional healing stuff, and then other times we are able to now see that light, right? We've got to the point now where we are excited about the possibilities that are ahead of us. But it's
interesting actually, coming back to for the
just put the light on.
Coming back to the Alex Michael latest song, it felt interesting to me to hear him play that, because it was like, wow, so you've also been feeling differently, a migration or evolution of the the lens through which you're looking at life. And before I lose this thought, I thought it was interesting how what you started by talking about tonight was to do with
the full moon.
No,
codependency.
Codependency. Now, codependency comes from the past.
Yes.
And then you were talking about futurizing.
Yes.
And so those are the two. Interestingly, because we often talk about that as above, so below, and the head and the hell and so on, but this one is like another plane. This is like the future and the past, and those also need to be at center. That you're not living from the futurizer, worry, and you're not, taking your lens from life.
The worries coming from the past. That's why you're futurizing, because your mind's only. Of course, that's when you start to do the work, and you can start to see what the mind's doing. And it's interesting because the same thing internally you can see on the outside. Like you can see the government, which is the mind, the ego, doing its thing. Well, the same can happen within, where you start to be the observer of how the mind it needs what needs to be in the familiar, it needs to be in certainty, and it's using only those memories as its lens to see what possibly could happen in the future. But actually, when you return to who you truly are, when you're in flow, then actually the possibility of so much more happening is beyond what our mind can handle or can even imagine, which is quite threatening, because our identity is based on limitation, and I can't have this, or victim consciousness, or whatever else, and so that's how it futurizes. It's going to be unsafe, depending on what your experience is and what your wound is and what your story is and what the lens that you're seeing. How we distinguish our lives is based on the past until we start to dissolve that distinguishing.
Yes, Nora Norton. I see you there. And it's actually, I just noticed that, well, we've got a few ladies in the chat, which is really nice, because earlier on I said there wasn't really many. I know that Kathy was here, but I see Hippie has shaken herself into the room. So thanks for your support and being here. Nora as well. Yeah, so okay, I think I'm kind of, well, I'm just trying to see if I've caught up with the chat. Someone had said something earlier that had was talking about the sky scratchers, the cloud dusters. One of my out there theories is that part of it is to do with putting chaff into the atmosphere so that the ether net works better, that can handle more traffic or something. I know I'm not I'm not saying that the other far more catastrophic health-wise.
Well, they will affect whatever they're putting in will still be part of your toxic load, right?
Sure.
So,
Just
but
like
it doesn't
the
necessarily have to be that the chemtrails are killing you.
Yeah. I'm just ready with my Rizzler and popcorn. That's Nathan. We'll be seeing you hopefully in a week or so, Nathan. On the 20th maybe, something like that, 21st. In fact, guys, I'm thinking of going to Speaker's Corner on Sunday the 20th of April. Long story short, we're going to be near enough to London for me to go to the real Speaker's Corner. We don't want no fake Speaker's Corner from ball types. That's on the 20th of April. So if you are...
No, the 27th. 20th is Easter Sunday.
Thanks
not that we celebrate Easter, but we will be around family.
Right.
It's the week after that, 27th.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'll see you, Squirrel, before that. But Sunday the 27th of April, isn't that what I said? Sunday the 27th of April, Speaker's Corner. So if you're in London, why don't you come and say hello, and maybe you can have a few conversations with some people as well.
Yeah, you really enjoy having people in the field with you, don't you?
I do,
You went to Chester the other day, and actually being alone is just... we miss Sarah and Dean. We've been too far away from them for them to join us, but hopefully we'll...
Oh, we'll be seeing you, Sarah and Dean.
Yeah,
we're going to see you soon.
This is
in
probably
a week
a good
or
time
so.
to
And we
remind
also
people about Norfolk.
Norfolk, and that's on the 17th. So that's Thursday. Today is Friday. That's in 6 days' time.
Yes.
In 6 days from now, on the 17th of April,
That's
at
right.
The Cock. It's the name of a pub. I didn't say that unnecessarily. But it's in Deerham, and we'll be there from about 7 o'clock. So
if you can make it.
If you can make it, please come on down. If The Cock is too full, then there's a beer festival happening the next day, and there's going to be a whole lot of kegs like lined up in the pub, and the room that Simon normally uses to gather is probably going to be full of kegs. If that happens, then we'll be at the pub over the road, right over the road, so it won't be hard to find.
Have you told everyone, I don't know if you told them in your live the other day, that you were in Chester and there's a Flat Earth pub or bar?
I did mention it in my live, but not everyone would have seen the premiere. If you didn't see the premiere, then I couldn't live stream because Chester has really poor satellite coverage for some reason. Just satellites don't seem to be able to get in there. So I had to pre-record or record it, and even then I only got some of my conversations. But I did feel a little bit kind of like, Well,
you just enjoy it. It's good to have like a group of people, chatting.
Yeah. I had a couple, 2, 3 really, really good conversations, predominantly with 2 guys who were. It was helpful for them and nice for me to have a deeper conversation.
That is another part that's kind of there. It's somehow, in some respects, harder to be out in the street having conversations because there's so many people that are just not interested in even having those conversations.
Yeah. Well, Nathan says it's not for everyone to see through the veil. That's the purpose of a veil.
No, absolutely not. But sometimes you have to then also decide, where's your energy best.
Kathy says at this time we are separating the hybrids from the NPCs. We are the Great Awakening. I mean, I'm like respectfully cautious about like where all of that sits. The NPC thing. I've said this for years. Brian Stavely. I've said this many times. I feel like I could walk down the street and walk past somebody and be an NPC in their life because I didn't interact with them and I was just a passerby on the street. And so if that be true, then could I be somebody else's NPC in someone else's reality, that I'm just a person in traffic that's making the traffic queue longer and they didn't want it to be longer this day, but I had to be there. So I because it also means that my loved ones, family members and so on, who for me are, equal, and, the majority, most of the world, it seems, the people are from the same creator. And is it I've used this analogy before, Kathy, and that is that perhaps it's a bit like, and I say this as humbly as I can, but it's a little bit like, you've been picked for the football team, but other people have been picked to be in the stadium, and they don't necessarily need to be playing the game and scoring the goal in order to go home with a win. Their team won, but they weren't necessarily participating in any meaningful way.
Or the orchestra, there might be the main orchestra that plays, they're up front and they're going to get their applause.
The soloist.
But there's the little guy on the side that needs to press the button, and there's the
triangle.
Everybody's participating.
Did you hear me? I got to do 5 tings in the middle of that song.
Do you know, I also see it this way too, is that we're all here to... We all have equal opportunity, but we also have free will, and it doesn't matter. It's only, it really doesn't matter. And what if? Well, yeah, I mean, that was what I came back from the DMT in 2015 with. Nothing here matters. I got that message over and over and over again while I was in there. Nothing here matters, and I wonder also that, you could interpret that as nothing here is matter. It's all light. But that this is really just like even though I had this growth in self, awareness of what my higher self is, and this sense of honoring that, I also had this kind of almost like hedonistic, perspective of, well, nothing here matters. So as long as we're not breaking the golden rule, anything can kind of, whatever feels right can... Of course it matters when you're in this experience, but I think when you, like we often say, this could be a moment in time, this experience, and from that perspective, do you know what for me personally matters more is that these people that we want to call NPCs, or we want to say are asleep, or whatever you want to say about them, that I can meet them where they're at and still love them.
And I was one of them.
Yes, we all were.
Although like as a youngster, I knew that once I'd kind of gotten into smoking a bit of cannabis, I knew that what I'd been taught about cannabis and frightened about it was not true, and that then you research kind of how it was criminalized and all of that control and so on. So I was always aware that it was wrong. That was wrong, but I
even question the whole wrong and right thing. I think that's also one that there obviously are some core do no harm, and I truly believe that we are one of our main opportunities in this lifetime is to come back to love, is to come back to that experience of love, whatever that is for the individual, but to come back to love. That includes forgiveness and being of service and just being in joy and bliss and all those things. Doesn't mean you don't have the other things, but just to come back to love. And if that be the case, then I feel like if I am still dividing or labeling people as somehow not worthy or not of that same opportunity, then that for me isn't.
It's
doesn't
a little bit
feel
like
that.
and I'm, I've also had to kind of wrestle with some of these concepts, and we see it in religion, we see it in national identity, or a sense of, wow, I'm this religion, and therefore I'm better than you over there, and
or I'm superior, or I'm right and you're wrong.
And of course, what happens if that person realizes later on that their religion was misleading them, and they leave that religion? Their sense of who they are is going to take quite a hammering because it was attached to that thing. And so,
well, it's happening all the
15 years
time,
ago,
right? Why do you think the globalists fight you so hard? It's because they don't want to give up that knowing. They don't want to give up that certainty. And for me, I think it's less about thinking that they're stupid or they're asleep. It's just, I know how strong the mind is. The mind will hold on to what it knows because that is safe. It's safe to be right. It's safe to be in the knowing. So it's more about that. What I would say is an astrologer the other day spoke about, we're in this energy, there's another wave of what they call biopurification. So it's another opportunity for awakening. So there is a lot of that energy available, and actually I'm seeing a little bit of that, just in little things. Like I had my niece over, she was starting to talk about the sort of more deeper stuff, not anything like major shifts, but there was just a little glimmer, and so I like to believe the possibility that everybody has that opportunity.
Like I've moved from NPC to playing character, in a way, I suppose, using that same language, but I was in the NPC thing. Someone 15 years ago maybe told me about 9/11, and I kind of brushed it off, and so on. And so for them, they could have, you're an NPC, so the Great Awakening is, I think, I love the idea of a Great Awakening. I think it would, if that's how it's to be, but it's something that we've been told about in books, and we can't be absolute about anything that comes in a book, and so I do wonder whether we aren't, maybe being kind of like given this script. And there's this sort of Great Awakening, just like if you think about the hippie movement in the 1960s before it was steered. You've got to think how there were a lot of people then anti-Vietnam War. They would have known about other things, the banking system, blah blah blah, and even pharmaceutical, and they would have been going, we're going to get this awakening, we're going to get, and we've got this wonderful leader in John F. Kennedy, who's going to be like RFK. He's going to mandate, triple boosters and all that. And then that was stolen from those people, and then there was like it kind of got washed away, and so I want that. I want the Great Awakening. I think that would be
But what does
awesome.
that even mean? What are people wanting it to mean? I think the Great Awakening. What are they wanting it to mean?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, is it your Great Awakening? Or does it need to be
freedom? Is it happiness? Is it what is it? Is it not that is actually already all available to us? And really, the Great Awakening is that we remember. That's more important. Is that we remember who we are.
But if the bifurcation is is a real thing, and we think it really is a possibility, then you do get an awakening, because there has to be like a widening of the stream, that there were, some front runners, and then here we are, and then more will come through, this awakening through a bifurcation. I'm for that, and I see that, but I cannot envisage at this point, and maybe it's a limitation on my own mind, but I cannot envisage all of the players or all of the non-players rushing down out of the bleachers, as I think what they call it in America, out of the stadium, out of the stands, rushing down onto the pitch and going to score the goal, or even playing on the team.
But the depth of the pain in this world is massive, and I think that maybe also we are in a rush. We think we need to get somewhere, and we're looking at it in a very linear way. Like, we've got to get from here to here. When maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's a shift in consciousness, or a shift in the way that we are in the world, the way that we're being in the world, which then allows us to see a shift in the way things are here.
Correct. I'm telling you, that song that Alex, we played at the beginning tonight, that song is, it kind of it offers you the opportunity to look at your day in a different way. And I think that that's so much a part of this actualization, Great Awakening, is to look at yourself and then the world in a different way, because this Great Reset and all of these things that the Schwabs and the other clubs and Donald Trump on the moon, all of that, they have their agenda, and
for all of it, it's like we're trying to get somewhere. Get somewhere where we're going to be more peaceful. Get somewhere where we're going to be more abundant. Get somewhere where we're no longer going to have this, or we're no longer going to have that. We're no longer going to have income tax. We're no longer. It's like we've got to get somewhere. And I go back to what I think I've said a few times here, is that there is this idea that the mind thinks that if it finds the bridge to the other side, then we'll be okay. Then we'll be happy. Then we'll have what we need.
Yeah.
But there is no bridge, and there is no other side. It is here already.
Yeah.
And all the worry, like Alex sings, there's nothing to worry about. The worry is our mind seeking that safety and that presence, and I think all the while the higher self, or the soul, knows. It knows, and it's beckoning us to come back to ourselves,
Yeah, to come back to ourselves. I don't disagree with Kathy at all. I just have like a slightly different. It's a little bit like, it's a little bit like in this country, and maybe obviously in America, where you've got the migrant story and how Mexicans are therefore perceived in certain parts of the country. There's now Mexicans, perhaps it was Africans at a different time, or perhaps in a different part of the world it's Africans, and in this country, in England, it's migrant boats with young fighting age Muslim men, and they are being cast in a particular light by the media for a reason, right? We were talking about propaganda last week, and that will be used to hold you back. You, the person who is standing on the border going, I don't want you Mexicans coming in here. I know that there are economic reasons. I know that there are socio-economic challenges. And I know that the whole debate has been, in America, framed around, what's that? There's a really well-known gang, Colombian gang, I forget their name now, Barack or something or other. Anyway, the ICE seizures focus on, oh, you see, we got this guy. He was a terrible, terrible man, and he probably was. I'm not debating that. But what they'll do is they'll round up these 300, bad boys who, as a conspiracy theorist, they could have been offered a ticket to the country anyway. But just that they would have these, and the same in the UK, where they only need to have a handful of rogues amongst the whole crowd to create the story that this whole lot is a particular way. Now, when I look at those people and I go, they are those awful people, I am castigating myself. I am speaking ill of God or creation's own creation in the form of a Muslim man or a Mexican man. And I think so. I think there's a risk of me keeping a veneer of like, of I'm special because I know what I know. And
why do you think you do? Why do we think we do this as humans? Why do we
veneer that?
Well, no. Why do we want to keep this
exceptionalism?
Special? Well, what? But why though? It's a form of survival, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was gonna reference Jesus. Example of Jesus being, like humble, despite having, it seems to me, to have, a world of knowledge. He absolutely knew that the earth was flat, but that wouldn't have been even a contested thing. But he had deeper spiritual spiritual knowledge of the I and who we are and so on. And I think that once we have that, then he would tend to the sick and the prostitute and the whoever. It wasn't like and the NPC.
Actually, I heard something today that actually the way he saw those is that they actually had more chance of being
camel through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, because their lessons were harder, so their chance for spiritual awakening was that much greater than, say, the minister in the church who was just didn't have a tough life.
Yeah. So let's hope that all people, maybe not in this lifetime, but it would be awesome if it was, have the potential. I don't think it is, because I feel like it's a graduated school of. Well,
again, we're fixated on the linear experience.
Yeah, and you can't have like just all like doctorate level graduates. There has to be the whole school from the baby to the.
Totally.
So but I think that in their time, then all of the souls have the opportunity to come to the awakening.
Yeah, and we have free will, so you have the opportunity to not do that. Just another example of the sort of NPC thing, or the way that we can see something, comes back to this topic that I was talking to you about, resentment and codependency and all those kind of things, and what came up with me, and is in particular current because of the Sun and Chiron in Aries, is my experience of the masculine led me to make decisions that they let me down, that they disappoint me, that I can't trust them, and those are based in like little where I was little, where I didn't feel safe, that I didn't feel like my needs were met, like I didn't feel seen. And then I made the decision that men, the masculine, let me down. I can't trust them. They're not going to see me. They're not going to hear me. They're going to disappoint me. And entangled with that is a whole lot of heartbreak and sadness. And so then I find all the ways to make sure I keep the masculine inside me as well. You know, my inner masculine too is like, the masculine energy must just, is not to be trusted. And so it's the same thing, isn't it? I've made a decision based on experience that that's the whole feminist movement, is we have to be equal or better than the man.
Pick up on this comment from Happy about trauma can hurt our perspectives of ourselves.
Totally.
Well, I would say that was as clear and obvious a statement as water will always seek and find level when at rest. There's no doubt in my mind that trauma can hurt our perspective of ourselves, and there's no doubt in my mind that circumcision and heel prick tests and all of these sorts of barbaric treatments that are meted upon our brand new born selves are done to create the trauma that will be used, a psychopathy that will be exploited later in life.
Well, yes, but that's more, for me, I think that comes to that more fundamental, I'm unsafe. And so the trauma that hurts, that means that we turn it back on ourselves. I'm almost certain that on some level, if we were really willing to sit in it and admit it, we all have shame about, there is something shameful that we hide in the shadows about ourselves, and it is a decision that we make very, very, very young, and it's normally I am bad, I am unworthy, I am disgusting, I am unlovable, I am a failure, I am not valuable. There's normally,
I'm not good enough,
I'm not good enough, I'm too
never
much.
win.
That's a very feminine one. I'm too much. So there's this I am that we carry, and it's hidden under shame and entangled in a whole lot of heartbreak and pain, and then we find all the ways to get to cover it up, to mask it, so no one can see it, and even ourselves, so that we can't see it. And those are the lies that I say we tell ourselves. And as a way of surviving, not as a shameful, oh, look at you doing that to yourself. No, as a in a compassionate way. Wow, I learned first I decided those things based on the experiences I had, and then I learned all the ways to survive, and it's got you to this point. I suppose what I'm saying is, you don't have to just survive there, and you don't. For me, freedom, true freedom, is when I'm free from those stories of
That's
I am bad, I am unworthy.
Yeah, the freedom of having not needing a passport and getting, a gold card is not the same as the freedom that we're really here to find. And I've said it before, I think you can find that were you to be listening to this podcast in a prison cell. I would love to think that, well done for getting a signal and a phone in your cell, but that that this message was relevant to someone in such a state, a situation, because it has to be that. that, it would be awesome to be able to, charter a ship and plane and whatnot and head as far out, as we can, we want to, and go and explore and so on. But that's really not the primary purpose here. I think there's some, I believe that there might be some magical stuff to be discovered out there. But if we are to rip open the gates of Shawshank Prison, board a ship, and take ourselves off to some other land in which people have found themselves centuries ago, then I would say that we would be like ducks out of water, or fish out of water. More appropriate.
Is that
we
one
would not.
okay?
Yeah, that's good. We would not. I love the scenery we have in the backdrop there. It is quite pretty.
We have had incredible. We were just reflecting on how grateful and how much we've loved this sit, and what it's so interesting. Luckily, I write a journal, so I'll be able to one day look back and remember what we were experiencing at the time. But yeah, we're really grateful for the experiences and the growth and the time and all that we've had here, and the sunsets.
Yeah, and
the sunrises actually.
Sunrises and sunsets have been magnificent here. Obviously quite a few days they've been scratching the sky, but that aside,
it's a really pretty part of the UK.
Yeah, we're near Chester.
Yeah, really, really pretty.
But we won't be here for much longer. And next Friday, because we're on the move, next Friday we won't be doing our live stream.
Public holiday for a lot of people. I know if you don't follow it, then it's just a day off. But we will be with our daughter, which is always really lovely.
Yeah. So we won't do one next Friday, but we will
the
following Friday. Yeah. As I said. Oh, well, that'll be 2 days before I go to Speaker's Corner. So it'd be awesome if you can let people know that there's something going on in Speaker's Corner on that Friday.
Hopefully you'll get a signal there, because you have in the past, so you'll be able to do it.
I should be good. Yeah, it should be good for that.
And then we will obviously continue on then. And like you said, hopefully we'll be able to have Alex Michael come and chat to us for a little while, and we can talk more about Spain and the possibility, if anyone's interested, of coming to that. So we'll do that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I suppose this opportunity that if anybody would like to inquire about our support that we give, or our coaching and mentoring, or is interested in astrology reading, or I do offer like mini readings, so people can at least understand a little bit more about the energetics that they have come here, and the potential. It's like today, I was explaining to Deb about I'm Sagittarius rising, and that I'm, freedom is a really important value for me. But it's not only freedom like out there. It's this sense of freedom and peace and within. And I can see how my journey I am having to overcome and heal the aspects that have held me back from that true freedom. So if anybody's interested in a mini reader, I can do that too for free. So just email Trinity4Man.
That's very kind of you.
Well, it is only a mini reading. It's not going to go into much depth.
I think for me, there's a lot of fascinating insights to be gleaned from understanding the print and the blueprint at the time that you were born, and the story that you came to participate in. So MS13 is the gang. Leave My Rights Alone wants to start trading with carrots. And
We fed carrots to the horses next door. They love them. So
yeah. Hippie's friend said gold has gone up by 175 per ounce in 3 days. I think that's to do with sort of
the trade
yeah,
stuff.
and there being like this sort of fairly large. I haven't followed in the last day or two, but fairly large stock market adjustment, which could presage a much bigger fall, and people are looking for something more certain. And in times of insecurity, people turn to gold. So that's gold, not hold. Yeah, Jesus never existed. That's one that if you haven't heard me say before, I don't have I would rather just kind of go on the midline on that and go, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I think that a lot of the lessons that he or a collection of people, a bit like perhaps Shakespeare, a collection of people, or one man, and in the case of Muhammad, another man, and in the case of a few other these people who kind of had a story to tell. There were certainly some truths in what they had to say, and we think that the Bible offers, and the other books, they offer a Bhagavad Gita. They offer a blueprint for.
Well, they're teachings, aren't they? They're opportunities to as ways of
rules of the road. You know, like learning to drive and reading the book on all the road signs and stuff like that. And I think that if you've read the book on the road signs, you studied it and stuff, then you're kind of good to go driving, and work it out.
apply it to your life.
Apply it to your own roads and your own conditions.
Well, we do it all the time, and there's people that inspire me, and I go and listen to their teachings, and you do the same. So, and I hope that I can be inspiring to someone too. I'm not saying I'm necessarily Jesus or
no, but Leave My Rights Alone says he's not coming back, which obviously can't be true, because if he never came, how could he come back? But what I would say is that it kind of comes out in the stuff we were saying earlier on, is that I don't think that, for me, the big whether or not he lived is like, if he lived, he wasn't saying that you have to follow me, and I'm going to die to save your sins and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think that. That's where me and my Christian brothers really sort of depart from the storyline. For me, it's like that we are the Christ, and we are the one who will save ourselves, and we are the one that needs to forgive, such that we can live in love and give goodness to the world and to ourselves, and so
possibly the returning of Christ is actually consciousness, or the ether. I like to think is a possibility that the ether is got more expanded light or consciousness or information or energy or frequency, whatever you want to say. That's happening now, and there is the possibility that that's where the whole "I can't breathe" came from, because actually we are experiencing an upgrade or a reset or an awakening, or whatever you want to see it as, in the ether, which is allowing this remembrance and this awakening within, and this possibility to return to who we truly are.
Yeah, I think
maybe that's what the second coming is, or the Christ returning is.
Yeah, because perhaps when you're born, in those early moments, in those early months or whatever, you have the Christ light sort of, you are still connected to source. And then once the fontanelle closes, this is my theory, that you lose that connection. And then so the second coming would be perhaps, the
journey home.
Remembering, coming back,
A
Because,
reconnection.
and I mean, it's well known that, the story of Jesus is that he's crucified on a cross at a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And so there is like and Santos Bonacci is probably the one who's, there's been others that have spoken on it, but, years ago, this guy came to my attention like, wow, there is this whole metaphysical or physical process or processes that can occur within that are allegorized in the stories of Jesus. And he didn't die, in my view, for your sins. If he lived, he died because of the sins of the Sanhedrin, of, you could even say the Pontius Pilate, but, there is, inside of yourself, you have your own Pontius Pilate. You have your own, I forget the name of the mayor or whatever, who was the guy who was sort of, responsible for it. But, you have all of that inside yourself. You have your own jailer. You have your own prisoner. You can crucify yourself.
You have the 12 disciplines.
And the 12 disciplines. And the 12 primary nerves that come off the spine. There is apparently 12. I only learned that this week.
And we also know that we looked at this many years ago. My rod and staff shall protect you all the days of your lives. Is that how it goes?
Comfort.
Comfort
My
you.
rod and staff shall comfort.
And we know that the vagus nerve, which comes right into the skull, is in the shape of a
two-pronged fork.
Yeah.
And
so how much of those teachings are, like Dave says, allegories, and they're open for interpretation, and for me, again, that's more of a reason for me to be able to return to myself, so I can connect to something that I feel.
But imagine, leave my rights alone, that there was a dude, and obviously the word Jesus is a new word. J is only a few centuries old. But there was a dude who lived at a time, 600 years, 1600 years, 1,000, 2,000 years, whatever. In fact, there are dudes who live in this time right now who are going, listen, this is not how we should be. These bros, these hoes down at Westminster or White House or wherever are misleading you, and they are tricking you, and the priests are up to all sorts of mischief, and guess what? Then Elon Musk shadow bans you or bans you from Twitter, and YouTube shut your account, and even in this country, people are getting. Not that I support, because it does depend on how outraged they are, and calling names of their brother and sister is a bit of a mistake. But you can't. People are being, and of course whistleblowers who have unalived themselves in the back of the head, kind of thing, for trying to tell the truth about what's going on. This has been going on forever. The crucifixion, if you like, or the shadow banning, the removal of people who speak out against the status quo has been going on forever. So, that could have happened, and that's why I can't be even angry with it, because for me, like if I was like, and this is what's happened in the past, we're guilty of this ourselves. People who were whistleblowers to MMR, we were like, put them on the cross, hang them or whatever, And here we...
It's dangerous.
Yeah. And so we've been in the crowd throwing stones and going, you bloody fool, you think the earth is flat? Kind of thing. So, and there are sometimes in the street, people who you feel like, were they given free license to do whatever they want, they would throw stones for me saying that the earth is flat and that they are divine beings. And so I believe that message there's been people trying to get that message. However, it does seem to me like these, religious texts are hiding the truth not for the profane, but for the few. So there you go on that. Lima Razran, he's got a lot to say. Too many people into gods. We are the gods. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, this is my friend Run Boston Bear, AJT, a super strong Christian. I do respect that.
Well, you know what I would say about Run Boston Bear is that the most overwhelming, not overwhelming, that's the wrong word, the most, I don't know what the word is, but what I'm trying to say is that he evokes the feeling of love.
He expresses that.
He
He's
expresses
like
that, and I feel
so if you want like an example of like a
intention.
Christ-like intention,
Exactly.
then
Run Boston Bear would be.
JT has kind of got that fairly well waxed.
His intention is to wake up every day and be the most honourable and
love your brother. And
yes.
he's in here. He knows we don't have the same perspective on Jesus. Of course, just like with Muhammad, I would not mock or belittle or whatever, even though I have a different sense of that. I would never say, oh no, well they didn't exist or they're just
we don't
not
actually
significant.
Know, do we?
Well, I mean, some people will say that there's enough historical blah 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 blah. So I don't even want to go in that because for me, once upon a time, I did wonder whether the Shroud of Turin was actually the proof that Jesus existed and so on and so forth. These things are really, we live in a world in which people believe dinosaurs and that oil comes from their bones and crap like that, So,
well, and that they've got poo on the moon.
They've got poo on the moon that they need to clean after 5 decades. That's not even, but it's more about, and that's the thing, is that what we lose when we remain rigid in our identity groups is that we struggle to relate to our brothers and sisters in other areas. And it's, for me, my own journey of coming back to treating people with the same love and respect that I would have done before, but knowing that they are not in a position where they can.
Well, you're this
take
week
the world.
You were tested on that this week, weren't you, with your father? He came at you with some of his identity belief systems, and it brought up and as an opportunity for you to see what was still there, but you were able to stay open-hearted to him, which is part of the evolution.
Yes. Well, there's some interesting and interesting chat in the thing. Didn't mean to sound like a smart ass. Don't know whether it's ass or ass, depending on where you are in the world. I went into a bar. That was David. I'm not sure that what he 24 is X, which is 24 chromosome. They're in a pretty deep conversation there. I can't really catch up with that right now. But I was in a bar in, I think, like the West States of America in 1988 when I was doing my road trip. And I asked her, I was skint. I had no money at all. I was living on like white bread, cheap white bread, and sachets of ketchup from Wendy's or McDonald's or whatever, something that was kind of. So, but I had gone into a bar and asked the lady for some ice, and she turned to her co-worker, a bloke, and said, "Hey, he just asked me for ass." No, I want frozen water, ice, ice. Anyway, that's that. Yeah. So much flat water. I came up with a potential experiment. I don't know. Maybe this has been done, or maybe it's just not that smart, or it's easily demonstrable without actually going to any effort of setting this up. But I thought that imagine you could get like planks. Let's just say they're 5 meter long planks, and you could get 200 of them, and you would have 1,000 meters of planks that you could take a spirit level along the beach. You need like a 1 mile beach. And you take a spirit level and you peg them all in and you create like one straight bar that's 1 kilometer long. And then you map that against the horizon for all of that time. And if you think about it, when you look out into the horizon, you're seeing like this, triangle in a way. And so you're seeing a very wide arc. Anyway, just food for thought. Maybe you guys who've been around this a while might have some thoughts on that. So that had come to my mind the other day. I do wonder, while we're just on that, I do wonder if it be true that the flat Earth, modern flat Earth awakening or movement has been steered. What would be your approach to the steering? Would it be to seed ideas? I was thinking about this while I was gardening today. Like the research flat Earth term, for example. Would that term have been seeded so we always use that? So we always used language that was unhelpful to the cause. And of course, I bang on about my 8 inches per mile squared is a hoax. And it could be other things to do with things that would seem quite obvious, but because we've been seeded, the idea that we couldn't have been propagandized, and we could have been, and given that there was, it seems, a movement to steer and mislead, then you have to question, I wonder what things I repeat and I don't look at because of the steerage that I might have received in my early days in who sort of holds the purse strings, or who holds the who holds sway. Anyway, just food for thought. I don't want to bang on about that because, well, it's not all that relevant to the journey of self. Knowing that we've been deceived is like the oldest story going, right? So, hey, Phil Jones, peace and blessings. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Oh, Hippie Shake. Oh, did you miss that? Kathy was just filling you in. There's an article that came out. It was in the Daily Star.
You can show them again quickly.
I could show you again quickly. Look, I can just do this and then quickly flick over here, and there you go. Giant heap for mankind. The Daily Star. What's the date? 11th of April. So it's not
today.
It is today.
Yeah.
Not the 1st of April. It's not
an
April Fool's joke.
The Daily Star. Let's not think it's...
Yeah, it's not like the it's not the prime time of newspapers, but they were the ones the other day I saw calling World War III and so on. But they are saying that the moon is so full of astronauts' waste that NASA is offering a shed-load of cash to whoever can clear it up. Now, this is absolutely incredible, because how, after 50 years, when the last time anyone went there, according to their deception, it's been so long. Like if we'd been going there like they'd promised us in the 1970s, that we'll be going there on holiday. You could imagine there perhaps being a bit of a backup or a build-up of.
I said to Dave, isn't it a bit like being on a caravan, and they would have taken what do you call it, a cassette?
Yeah.
And then when they came back, they would just empty the cassette. But
yeah. No, it looks like they've emptied their cassette right onto the lunar surface there. And I don't suppose there's any lunar rats that would have munched on that. But can you imagine who's like on toilet duty? Or does it just have like a little chute down the bottom, like some of those high-rise buildings, and it just kind of shoots itself out after a few Donald Trumps? It is interesting, isn't it?
How do they know that there's waste on the moon?
Well, because some bean counter just did an audit of the number of times they had a turd, and you thought they'd lost all the information to do with the moon landings, but apparently this one file, which had the records of every time they had a shit on the surface, has been discovered actually by Bart Sabrell. And so he's made a new documentary called "A Funny Turd Happened on the Way to the Moon." And then they had to drop the turd off on the moon's surface because they couldn't afford the weight of bringing it back. They could afford 4 tons of moon rock that looked like petrified wood, apparently, but they couldn't bring their turd back, so they had to leave it.
Well, it is a bit like people when they go for dog walks, right?
Yeah.
They won't
Yeah.
leave it on like the grass,
Yeah.
but they'll pick it up and then just leave it somewhere in a bag.
That's my absolute worst. These people that do the right thing perhaps by taking their dog's turd off the path, but then they'll put it in a plastic bag and sling the plastic bag into the forest. And that plastic bag hangs in the tree for years or whatever. It's disgusting.
Well, and so maybe that was the problem on the moon.
And this is why I tell you, they can't open the doors of Shawshank Prison because they're just throwing their turd bags all over the place, and they've even left them on the moon now. Someone has gone up there. I bet it's Elon Musk. Hey? He's probably been going up there. Him and Epstein.
The moon inhabitable, so that they'll go to Mars.
Yeah, that's where Epstein is. Probably a few others as well. Up on the moon, shitting all over the place. Bloody hell. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, how dare the governments not let us go to the Antarctic unless we take doggy bags? Yeah. Well. Yeah. I want to get into how they made us wear face nappies, or made some people wear face nappies. Lima writes, why in a submarine at the bottom of the sea can the people inside jump up and down with all that weight on them? I mean, it's the same as the people in the airplane can survive at 30,000, 40,000 feet because they're in a pressurized sealed container that's designed to handle the pressure of the surrounding external environment or internal environment. Because obviously the pressure in an aircraft is greater than the outside, and then it's opposite when you're under sea. I enjoy scuba diving. I've done a bit of diving myself, not enough. Egypt and Thailand, and Red Sea, beautiful diving there, and I really, the pressure as it goes, and buoyancy is just wanting to force for you to go back up, and so on your way back up you have to stabilize your rise so that you can have a decompression at 5 meters, I think it is, before you complete the ascent. But yeah. So did you want? We love dogs, Hippie, and Cat. Yes, I would send Elon to Mars. I mean,
we should tell them a little story about we're house sitting to
Maine Coon.
Maine Coons, which are really just big cats and
small tigers.
We went for a walk yesterday to the forest
for an hour.
And the cat followed us
the whole way.
Wow. The first time.
Never
my
had
first
that
experience before. Of a
We've
cat
walked
coming
dogs.
on a walk.
I've never walked a cat before. It was quite special. But the Maine Coon is said to be a very clever cat.
Yes.
So yeah, Elon Musk is obviously deep snake. He never bought Twitter. If people believe that he bought Twitter, then I've got a bridge that I want to sell you. Because, and I did a video on this 2 years ago where he was doing an interview with a guy and talking about his acquisition of Twitter and reading Q notes all the time. And I was pointing that out in the video I made, so you can go back 2 years and see that if you want. And not only that, when the guy says to him, I've told the story before, you may have heard me say it, but when the guy says to him, so I see you've saved $3 billion in salaries, which is why you're going to make Twitter so much more profitable. And he said, yeah. And then moved on. And then right at the end, half an hour later, at the end of the interview, he says, the interviewer says, I need to make a correction. You didn't save $3 billion. You saved 300 million. Now, if Elon is the genius that people believe he is, and he's just gone in and raked up this $42 billion investment, and he's looked at the salaries bill and it's $5 billion. He said, like, I can doge that down to $2 billion. So yeah, I've saved $3 billion. Or he'd go, it's we're spending $500 million or 600 million on salaries. I can halve that and save 300 million. You would know the difference. I used to work numbers. That was one of my strengths, and I used to work numbers, and I could tell you like numbers that you'd be like, wow, how did you know all of those? Because I just have a head for, when I'm doing the accounting or something, I have a head for that. And I would be able to tell you, yes, it was 150 grand on this, it was 300 on that, it was 220 on that. And that's how we came to this number. So I know for sure. I mean, and it's not just that one piece of evidence that he is, and he was, I mean, so many reasons why Twitter became the useful tool. Whether it was, the easy one is to sort of help the Trump train get onto the moon. I mean, get into the Oval Office. Anyway. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I think that Elon is probably a composite. I don't know, we always see necessarily the same person. And then the other video I did on him was to do with him, his body not looking like a regular body. In the one time he's without a shirt, long range photography, to be fair, but it looks like he's wearing a bodysuit. So the idea, and other people in the truth community spend a lot of time on how there are a number of people who play different roles on the world stage, and so the idea that the person beneath the suit could be someone completely different. The idea that he has his own children, even that I think is probably a bit of a stretch. I think either he may have inseminated some woman in some ways, but I just think that it's all part of like a grand.
Do you know what it makes me think of when I think of him? That American sitcom called Third Rock from the Sun.
Third Rock from the Sun.
That that there are these entities, these characters, these other beings that have here, and they're, anyway, that's what I think of when I think of Elon Musk and Trump.
Yeah. So just an aside, I'm going to try for a little while, maybe next month, cut out like all carbs for a month and see how it goes, I've just been having one or two little sort of what I consider to be like, I don't want to say arthritis, but just like pain in the joint, maybe in the hip, that I'm thinking is that, I carried ZZ along for many, more than 1,000 miles like this. And so I do wonder whether the loading change didn't cause that, because it was when I was carrying him in the last 2 years I started noticing it. So I'm going to try that, because people say how staying on a strictly protein and fat predominantly diet for a while.
Well, we've pretty much been doing that. Yeah. We've been doing that, but there's a few more things that we need to clean our diet up on.
I'm all for also, other types of modes of dieting that seem to be beneficial for people. Like that would mean cutting, just going on a fruit thing or a veggie thing or a water thing for a while.
Well, it's a protocol. You're using it as a protocol rather than a lifestyle.
Because I do think that our diets are nuanced, that individual blood types and perhaps other body sort of variables can determine whether a person will respond well to one modality or another. So I thought I'd just share that with you, and we'll see how that rolls
and
out.
Alongside that, we're going to do certain other protocols.
Yeah.
And we can report back and let you know how they're going.
Yeah, well, that won't be until next month. I don't want to. I'm not gonna until we're going to be bouncing around a lot over the next
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then we'll be in a more stable situation for a few months. So we'll, you can look forward to more of this chat on a Friday if that's your thing.
And let us know if there's anything you want us to share. Do you want us to talk a little bit about detoxing and the things that we do? We can only tell you from our experiences and the stuff that we've learned.
Hippie's just started cutting out carbs. It's interesting, Hippie, that when you listen to what people say, they say that when they're without carbs, and it's mainly protein, no sugar, it's mainly protein and fat, they feel satiated, satisfied, and less hungry most of the time, so long as they're getting rich enough, appropriate grass-fed or whatever food. But the moment they take a little bit of carbohydrate, they feel hunger pangs, and it's like the whole thing falls apart.
Well, we know that for ourselves, don't we? We've been doing. I've been doing keto, and Dave's been doing it a bit. And when we do when more Dave than I, because I'm fairly disciplined most of the time and sticking to it. But I started it because I think that. Well, I know from my research that when you get to a certain age as a woman, and that perhaps happens the same for men, but certainly women, when you go into those menopausal years, that your insulin resistance increases, and the way that you process things change, and so your need for protein is more important. But I started noticing that I was having lots of pains in my body, and that the research I did was that I should stop the carbs, in particular anything with gluten in it, and I did, and the pains within a month went away.
There you go, and that great evidence in itself. Thanks Hippie Shake for reminding people about PayPal, and if you feel called to send a donation, that would rock. There was a point that Leave My Rights Alone has been very chatty. It's welcome to the channel. You may have been here before, but maybe not for a while. But you made an interesting point about the food taken and the waste are the same weight. I doubt that, to be honest with you. I worked in my young life. I worked in the fitness industry. I was a fitness instructor. My mentor was a world champion bodybuilder. There's two types: the Mr. Olympia competition, which is the steroid type, and then there's the Mr. World or something competition, which is meant to be steroid free.
This was the 90s.
90s, yeah.
90s.
But he won the heavyweight bodybuilder world thing. So he just says so it happened ended up being my mentor as a youngster in the fitness industry. I had a real interest in fitness and well-being, and I did a fair bit of research on it and so on. So I was fairly well respected as a trainer, blah, blah, blah. One of the things I used to think about was, why don't we weigh everything that we eat and everything that we pass? I'm not suggesting that we should all do that all the time. We'll leave that to the astronauts. But that it would be an interesting exercise to see whether what we put in equals what we excrete. Now, it's a complex thing because, see, some of the moisture, some of the water that's in the food will come out as sweat, urine. I suppose you could weigh that, but you can't really weigh the sweat. And then the more important element is that all of our food, well, maybe not some of the food that comes in a box, but all of our food is light. Everything is light. And just like when you take a pile of wood and put it on the fire, that 10 kilogram pile of wood is only a few grams of ash in the morning. So where did it all go? Well, it was all light. It was all heat and light. And I think that actually what's happening with a lot of our food, and this is why in all of my years of researching in the fitness industry, I never came across any conversation about what goes in can be weighed to be coming out, because I think that what comes out is much lighter than what goes in. Thankfully, because, I do eat quite a lot, and if I went to the moon, let me tell you, they might have a problem with overload there. I don't know. But I think that I think that a lot of our energy, what we see as an apple or a steak or whatever, once you burn it on the fire of the internal gut, and the energy is ripped from it, what we call weight, just like the ash in the fireplace tomorrow morning, is actually just heat or light. And then there's one more slightly nuanced thing which I'll throw into the bag as I'm talking to friends, and that is that, unfortunately, 100% of the ash, the remains of what you've eaten, doesn't leave you. We have these pipelines in our system that are full of little valleys and ducts and what have you, and just like a mud flood, these little valleys and ducts can get overloaded or filled up, and over time just sort of end up staying there. So I recommend enema, actually. We've done coffee enema, raw organic coffee enemas, but you can do it with distilled water, chamomile tea, as long as it's not boiling. And I really recommend that. In 2017, I started doing that, and I did it every day for 9 months. And I was, for most of certainly the early months, it was like, wow, there's still material there. I would go and have a Donald Trump, so go and sit on the moon for a moment, and then have a shower or an enema, and then I'd be like, there's more. It's like, there was like another half a trip to the moon's worth, more, and I said to Andrew a few times over that period, I was like, wow, what are we? What's this, like silt or mud that seems to have been collecting, and so that's a slightly nuanced element of that conversation, is that I don't think everything comes out, and even what does come out has been ripped, just like the firewood has been ripped of all of its electric bonds, and therefore the so-called perceived weight of it has been reduced, just like the ash in the fireplace.
Well, I also, and surely that our bodies are, I'm not basing this on anything that I've necessarily read, but or learned. That just makes sense to me, that if most food has cells, then, and we're extracting, for instance, the water element of that as hydration, because that's another thing we've been listening to a few people talk about, that we're actually drinking too much. This whole idea that we need to drink this copious amounts of water, that we don't actually, but that our food extracts the water, and that alone would mean that that what's left would already be less. Anyway,
I always think, sorry, I'm just going back onto the diet thing. A good flush out, and block the pipes. How much is in us? I think that that'll vary from person to person, but I do look at the typical kind of middle-aged man with I'm stereotyping, but with the distended stomach. Some of that distension it's not fat. There might be some what they call visceral fat, which is the fat that packs in around the organs. But I also think that it's like the hose pipe that is your intestines has had to widen by half a centimeter or a centimeter because of the extra load that it's got packed around the walls. and so that little bit of difference in this, how long is it, 12 meters or something? I see Hippie's a vegetarian, so she'll probably know. When I was researching, vegetarianism, one of the arguments made in favor of vegetarianism is to do with the length of our intestine, and that meat is in there for 3 days, putrefying on its way out. And so this is energetically negative. I have, honestly, my friend Hippie, I would say that I have spoken to so many hardcore vegetarians or vegans who've gone, well, my energy levels were poor.
Well, Harry's a perfect example, isn't
John Smith Globe Liar, the legend. He was hardcore. When he and I first met, he ate dinner with us back in 2018.
2019.
And I spoke about my perspective on this, and he was very hardcore about his vegetarian, and some of that, and I think is the case with a lot of people, is to do with animal welfare, which is understandable. But you are the primary, you are the center of the universe, and everything that is here, provided by Disneyland, or God's tableau of Eden, or whatever you call this place, is for your stewardship, shepherding, and guiding. And so for me, like before there were factories that could produce mung beans and ship them around the world from Indonesia or wherever, I would have needed to get the energy from my surrounding environment. I would have needed clothing from the wool the sheep provided, and the old ones would provide me with a really fancy, good meal, particularly in the winter when there was nothing growing on the trees. So I respect your position, but I would say, because her comment was, because she is vegetarian, she dropping carbs will give me more energy, but I'm a vegetarian, so my protein comes from things like eggs and nuts. I mean, eggs and nuts are great, and I intend to eat lots of eggs and nuts. I do eat nuts, but I do think that we are made of red meat, and we should, in simple terms, without understanding what a protein is or an enzyme or all these different special things that we've only learned about in the last 20 or 30 years, that, that's a like for like energy exchange. If I got rust on my car, I'm not going to use plastic to fill in the rusty patch. I need metal. Someone goes, you could use carbon fiber, you could use fiberglass or something like that, but you really, what if your chassis is rusted, you want more chassis. Nathan, sorry. So if you're still there, I think there was something else going on, but I would say that's really where I would. A water fast can clear the pipes too. Yes, a water fast can clear the pipes. Although I did watch, years ago I was watching Santos Bonacci go through all sorts of weird fasts, and then in the last year and a half or so, he did one where he was like, you won't believe the stuff that's coming out of me. It's like, well,
I think that was
I thought you'd done all the fast.
It was called Zen Cleanse. It was a liver cleanse. I mean, I think it's a valuable cleanse. It's one that you use Epsom salts, I think, olive oil, and some sort of, I'm not sure if it's orange juice or something, or lemons or something, and this
lemon water,
the Zen Cleanse, and that people, the evidence that they get from it is these stones and other things. So I think there's some value in it, but I think that these cleanses are great to do, and I think we should do them if we feel called to, and they have, the outcome for us is a positive one. But I do think that it is about our, how we nourish ourselves, and what that
mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, what feels right for you. For me, it's like you do you.
Yeah, absolutely, you do you. But I mean, honest advice is, and of course I'm raising a child, so I only want to do what's right for him.
Yeah, well, I know naturopaths that if a pregnant woman had to come and say, I'm struggling to fall pregnant, and they weren't eating good quality protein, that would be the first thing that they'd advise. They'd advise them to start eating liver.
Yes, Harry was like, he's like, Dave, I'm eating like 6 eggs and a steak before lunchtime, kind of thing, and my energy levels are through the roof, and
yeah. We've spoken to plenty of people, Dan, many.
Yeah.
I think what's a really important aspect to this though is also the quality of the food that we eat, and that we tend to be gluttonous, and I don't mean that in a way of shaming. I mean that in a way of that often we are eating for other reasons other than to just nourish ourselves. And so I suppose it's being prepared to look at all of those aspects. What am I needing, and how am I meeting that need, and what's right for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I could also only get, if there were only eggs and butter, I know I could survive on that. But I've been trying to cut down on the carbs, and I've found that there's times it's like, oh man, I don't, because I haven't put enough of that energy in my world. And what Harry came back to me was, and I kind of knew this, but it was nice to have him because obviously he's a good researcher as well, and he's gone, well, there's these kind of things that these enzymes or whatever that you can only get from meat, amino acids, you can only get from meat. There's 2 or 3 of them, and you can obviously supplement them through the health food store. I think you can
get them, as my understanding, a little bit of research, you can actually get them from plant, but the quantity that you have to eat,
you have to be like a cow,
to be able to get that in your diet is so much that it's just near impossible. Whereas in a good quality piece of meat, you getting all of it and the right amount. But we've spoken to people like Lisa from Glastonbury, who was a vegan. In fact, she went to raw veganism, and her health just fell off a cliff. And she was part of a whole vegan community, and she was witnessing children who were suffering with cognitive issues. So yeah, I think anything to the extreme is perhaps not.
But I appreciate
healthy.
Hippie's perspective, which is that I don't push it on people, and I think it's one of those weird things where in some vegan or vegetarian environments, because meat is so, the whole image, the whole thing is like, please don't even bring meat to my house. Don't, if you, and and there is this kind of unspoken, because I've heard it from even Martin Kenny, it's like, we have to eat no meat diet because in order to attain spiritual thing. And this comes back to what we were saying earlier on about, in our world, in order for you to be this clean, you have to do this and you have to do that. And that makes us better than them who do that. And I think, that's the part of it that I find hardest. Not, everyone can eat whatever they like. Although anecdotally, I know so many people who've said actually, after 10 years, 7 years, it was a bit of a red flag. But it's more like that kind of like, and that's one of the warning signs that this has been weaponized. And with with people like Paul McCartney and his wife pushing veganism, Bill Gates pushing veganism or whatever, they want people on lab meat, off real meat. They want to they want to slaughter all the chickens and cows if they can because one of them got a cold. It just feels to me like, and there is this squeezing of, and the registration, as you'll know, Hippie, in the UK, of anyone who's got 1 or 2 chickens, you have to register them now. kind of thing. It just feels to me it's like one of those things that they're trying to squeeze out, but they're happy for you to eat the Kellogg's and the shite that they put in their boxes. So, there are a number of things that I would say, just in closing on that.
I also, for me, it's about conscious eating. So can I listen to my body and can I trust that it's telling me what I need right now?
Yeah. Well, Hippie would be happy to sit down with us and have a meal. Eggs for you, and I'll have the steak. Anyway, well, I think that's probably nice to see you gaining wisdom. Glad you could make it, and I'm glad all of you could make it. As we said, we won't be around next Friday, but the Friday after.
Yep.
Was there anything you wanted to?
No, happy full moon tomorrow. It's out there nice and bright in the sky. And yeah, just go with the flow of the feelings.
Rare steak from Be My Rights Alone. I worked at a steakhouse as a youngster, actually, just before I got into the fitness industry. I put on a few pounds and thought I need to get fit, and then joined a gym, and then they offered me a job. And then some people would come in and ask for it blue, like it's just basically come out of the fridge. And there are more and more people who are eating their meat raw and stuff. I can't really speak for that. In South African, we eat something called biltong, which is like
cured.
jerky.
I mean, it's more
jerky,
popular in this country now.
Much nicer than jerky.
You do find it in the supermarkets here now.
Yeah, which is just dried meat. And
cured meat.
Yeah, and the story goes back to it was an easy way for people to transport their meat, keep it cured and stuff, and they didn't have fridges back in the day, blah blah blah.
Well, it's probably when the pioneers came back after the floods, and they
had horse and cart. They built these massive cathedrals and had to eat like dried meat. I accept the point that the more you cook something, the more you destroy the potential energy. So the longer I leave a piece of wood on the fire, the more heat it's going to have given off, but the more it's returning to ash. And the same is true with our food, whether it be vegetables or meat. I think that the more you cook it, the less light remains within it. So there's probably some. So I'm sort of a medium rare guy. If they ask me, if I was in a restaurant, which I
also think we touched on this the other day. I know we're going back into talking, but we touched on this the other day that you heard something about blood types and also in your chart, me in particular, I have very little earth, and I think as a consequence I need that density, that sense of earthing.
That's a good point.
And so is meat more my go-to and my need for my body, and then someone who has more earth, perhaps more less water, they need other things.
Yeah, I totally accept that, and it may not be like a one-size-fits-all approach. I'm kind of comfortable with that. So, but I think if your motivation for doing it is because of the animal out there, just in the same way as with climate change. Oh, I won't take a plane because I'm affecting the cows or the climate. It's again putting the guilt back on you. You are the sinner. You are the reason why. In fact, someone I follow, Bro Sanchez, he says if it wasn't for humans eating meat, then the crows wouldn't eat meat, and the lions wouldn't eat meat, and the birds of prey wouldn't eat meat. Which is like, dude, that's such a stretch,
Well, we've said this before. The Eskimos would not survive the winter.
These cats, they come in with mice every now and again, Yeah. Is that a human's fault? It's because you humans are not, you're omnivores. But yeah, omni means all around, and omni being the universe. I think we are meant to eat from the universe, and the universe around us provides us with all of these things. Anyway, my friends, it has been fun. Until next time.
That's a love.